Kerans, if you can hear me. I'm quite know these things. Steve's got his thumb up, that's good. And I'm the Oxfordshire Biodiversity Officer for TVERC. And if I can manage to share my screen. I'll be telling you about the local wildlife site projects that we have in Oxfordshire and Berkshire. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So what we're going to cover, I'm going to talk a little bit about what local wildlife sites are. Then we're going to, along with Caitlin Coombs, we're going to describe some of the highlights from this year's surveys. And then finally, Caitlin's going to talk about how, if you're interested, you can get involved with the projects and how you can help. So what are local wildlife sites? They're quite a wide range of sites covering both private and public land that's been recognised as having high wildlife value. They are considered of county importance for the wildlife that they support. They're non-statutory sites, which means they're slightly different from things like triple SIs. They're not legally protected, but they do form a vital link with those sites, which creates an essential network of habitats. They are listed on the local authority plans, which means they must be taken into account when planning applications are being considered. So we've got two projects which TVERC are involved with, one that covers Oxfordshire and one that covers Berkshire. I work on the Oxfordshire project and Caitlin Coombs leads the Berkshire project. There's a few slight differences between the two projects in that the Oxfordshire project's a joint project with the Wildlife Trust and BBOUT. So Caitlin Coombs covers the landowner liaison, including seeking landowner permission, access permissions for surveys. But this is done by the Wildlife Trust for the Oxfordshire sites, along with offering some management advice. Otherwise, the projects are pretty similar, with TVERC covering responsibility for carrying out site surveys, managing the site selection process, which includes arranging an independent panel which consider the sites against a defined set of selection criteria. If people are interested in those criteria, they are available on our website. I'm sure we can share the link to those if people are interested. TVERC maintains information on local wildlife sites, including site descriptions, habitat information, species data, and the site boundaries as GIS layers. We also produce site survey reports, which the site selection panel uses to help assess the sites, and these are also provided to landowners. We support volunteers in carrying out additional site surveys, especially for species groups such as invertebrates and birds, which then help make a more complete assessment of the site's interest. So in Oxfordshire, we've currently got 393 local wildlife sites and 70 proposed sites, which covers about 3% of the county land area. And each year we carry out somewhere between 36 and 40 site surveys per year. And in Berkshire, a bit bigger total there, 719 local wildlife sites, 38 proposed, covering about 8% of the county, with approximately 20 to 25 sites surveyed each year. So this year's surveys, I'm going to talk a little bit about Oxfordshire ones, and then we'll pass over to Kate for the Berkshire sites. So this year in Oxfordshire, we carried out 38 site surveys, covered a pretty wide range of habitats, including ancient woodland, parkland, and calcareous grassland, lowland meadow, and quite a good set of wetland habitats, including lowland fen, Toofer Springs, and floodplain grazing marsh. These included some volunteer surveys, which included wetland invertebrates, orchid counts, We had quite a good number of parklands, so we got some volunteers to help with the veteran tree surveys, and we also had help with general habitat surveys. So just to give a few examples, one of the proposed sites was Wytham Park, which is immediately adjacent to Wytham Woods SSSI to the west of Oxford. It's a 77 hectare site, which is parkland, with a good number of veteran trees, some of which is just sort of about bordering on being just about ancient. There's several trees that are between 4.5 and 5 metres girth, so they're probably somewhere in the region of around 300 years old to up to about sort of 350. Once they get to about 400 years old, they're considered ancient. There's certainly veterans with a lot of good range of deadwood habitat, including things like rot holes, sap runs, large amounts of deadwood in the canopy, hollowing of the trunk, split branches and insect boring. You can see a few examples there. We also, not that they were a particular highlight, but we did have some cows chasing us around, so they've got in on one of the photos. And we're hoping we've now got enough information to get this site through panel, because it did get deferred last time. We did sometimes struggle with parkland sites in assessing the deadwood invertebrate interest, because it is, to get a proper set of data is so involved. And another site. One of the other interesting sites we went to was Buckland Marsh. Again, it's a pretty large site, 54 hectares. These are the sort of, a lot of sites are below 10 hectares. So yeah, once you get up to a site that's kind of 54 hectares, that's pretty large example of a local wildlife site. This site's between sort of Farringdon and Witney. It's quite near Chimney Meadows. And it's a large area of floodplain grazing marsh by the River Thames. It includes area of lowland fen and lowland meadow. It's an important site for birds, especially for curlew in Oxfordshire. And interesting species we found there included devil's bit scabious and round-fruited rush. The devil's bit scabious photo is obviously a little bit more photogenic than the round-fruited rush, but they're both on there. And also included a real good range of sedges, crashes and rushes species, with the things that people might be more interested in, the nice flowery things including marsh marigold, ragged robin, meadow sweet, tubular water dropwort, marsh thistle, marsh bedstraw, bird's foot trefoil common, valerian, meadow vetchling and pepper saxifrage. So quite a nice set of plants there. And quite extensive, quite nice and species rich, with extensive areas that were got a good abundance of nice wildflowers in them. So that was a good site. And the last one I'm going to talk about before I pass over to Caitlin was a really, really nice chalk grassland site near Woodcote. I'm being slightly vague about the name because there's no public access to it, but I wanted to include it because I wanted to share it with you because it was just so nice. I think it's got to be one of my favourite sites ever. I did go and visit it roughly 10 years ago, and it was nice then, but I think it's even nicer now. So it's really quite heartening to go and visit sites that do appear to have got considerably better over time rather than declining. So this is a 9 hectare site. Most of it's lowland calcareous grassland. It did include also areas of scrub and a section of woodland, but it is mostly the nice grassland on a steep south-facing slope in the southern Chilterns. It's priority habitat lowland calcareous grassland, really stunning, really beautiful bit of grassland. Large areas dominated by the broadleaved herbs. Yeah, of particular interest in the species, although there is a lot, was the common dodder, which is, you can see there's the red stringy bits on the bottom, in the photo on the bottom right hand side of the screen, and also lots of Dyer's greenweed, which is, again, that's in the yellow flower in the bottom right, but also on the top right hand side. Most of the yellow plants there are the Dyer's greenweed. But it's also got an impressive range of lots of other calcareous grassland plants, things like pyramidal orchids, squinancy, yellowwort, quaking grass, upright brome, greater knapweed, common century, dwarf thistle, vervain, wild basil, hairy violet, fairy flax, pound toad flax, downy oakgrass, meadow oakgrass, eyebright, common rock rose, wild thyme. I could go on, but I don't know whether I'm take up perhaps better round it up and pass over to Caitlin. But it's really nice, really impressive site, which I wanted to include just because it's a nice positive thing to include. So if I now pass over to Caitlin, she will give you some of the Berkshire highlights.
Okay, thank you, Julie. So hi everyone, I'm Caitlin. I'm basically the equivalent of Julie, but for Berkshire. So I've been surveying local wildlife sites in Berkshire this summer and really, really enjoying it. So Julie, if you could go on to my slide. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to talk you through some of my favourite moments or the highlights of 2021, the survey season. So this year there were 20 sites in total surveyed, and these included ancient woodland sites, lowland calcareous grassland, lowland fen, lowland meadow and wetland habitats. And I also had an amazing team of 22 volunteers carrying out specialist surveys, and they gathered, I think, probably a total of over 2,000 records for the local wildlife site project, which was really amazing. So thank you so much to all of those volunteers. Next. So a really nice site that I visited is called Craven, I was about to say Craven Hill, but I'm actually not sure. It might be Craven Hill now. I've said it out loud. But it's basically part of the Craven Hill estate in West Berkshire, and it comprises lowland fen and so an extensive flush with fen habitat in an area of lowland dry acid grassland in a sort of wider parkland landscape. So there were quite a few really nice ancient and veteran trees scattered around as well. And there were a whole variety of really nice species in the flush habitat, including lesser spearwort, cuckoo flower, creeping forget-me-not, greater birdsfoot trefoil, oval sedge, carnation sedge, and lesser pond sedge. There were definitely a lot of sedges which were quite challenging. And then the most diverse areas of the site had additional marsh pennywort, ragged robin, star sedge, square salt, St. John's wort, and heath spotted orchid. And yeah, in the bottom left picture there's a little frog which jumped onto my walking boot when I was looking at the sedges, which was quite nice. Next. So another site which I really enjoyed is called Lousehill Copse, and it's in an urban area in Tilehurst, Reading. And I was actually really pleasantly surprised at how lovely this site was, because it's quite heavily used by the public, by walkers, cyclists, dog walkers. So it's quite a large site. It's about 13 hectares. And there was also a proposed extension, which I surveyed this year, which was just a section of grassland and some scattered scrub to the east of the site. So I'm hoping to integrate that into the rest of the site and take that to panel. So hopefully that goes forward. But the majority of the site comprises lowland mixed deciduous woodland with areas of coppice, small streams and a pond, and then sort of an associated wet woodland flora throughout the woodland, which was really nice. And there were some specialist volunteers carrying out bird surveys, butterfly surveys and hoverfly surveys. So some ancient woodland indicator species I saw included wood melic, bluebell, ramsons, sanicle, woodruff, opposite-leaved golden saxifrage and spurge laurel. And yeah, you can just see the pictures there. It was quite a nice, diverse site, and yeah, definitely worth a visit if you haven't already or if you're close by. Next. And the third site that I want to talk about is called Holies Down in West Berkshire. So this is it's a National Trust owned site, and it's near Streatley. And it's a really nice chalk grassland bank or a dry valley running down to the Thames. and it has a huge array of wildflowers, chalk grassland wildflowers, and then subsequently has great habitat for bees, butterflies, and other insects. And honestly, at this site, I don't think I've ever seen so many orchids in one place. It was stunning. And I think this was probably my favourite site that I visited this year. So same as Julie, I've saved the best till last, I think. So on this site, there was bee orchid, and it was actually the first time I'd ever seen a bee orchid. So I got really, really excited about that. But also there were pyramidal orchids, common spotted orchid, salad burnet, wild basil, field madder, horseshoe vetch, fairy flax, dwarf thistle, common eyebright, and some other things. And so I had some field volunteers carrying out butterfly surveys and also hoverfly surveys. And one volunteer, her name is Linda Fenwick. I'm not sure if she's here today, but she came across the hornet robberfly, which is in the top left picture at the top there. Which, if you haven't heard of it, I think it's probably one of the largest species of fly that we have in the UK. It's a predatory insect, so it feeds on other flies and grasshoppers and dung beetles, and it gets to up to 25 millimeters in length, which is, if you think about it, pretty gross. But so that was a really, really exciting find. And yeah, there are just some other pictures there of the site. Next. So yeah, just a last little bit on volunteer involvement. So again, I'm so grateful. We had an amazing team of volunteers helping out with the surveys in Berkshire, but also in Oxfordshire. And they played, a really important role in identifying species which are going to go into the analysis of these sites and help them become protected, or help them, get the acknowledgement that they deserve. So if you want to get involved, please do get in touch. Please email Julie or myself. But also, along with survey support, it's also really useful if you know a site nearby that you might think, has supports really important habitat, or might be, valuable in some way. Please flag it up and get in touch with us, let us know, and we can look into whether it could be appropriate for designation as a local wildlife site. So anything you can do to get involved, we would really appreciate. Next. So there are just our contact details. So yeah, I'm in control of the Berkshire side of things, and then Julie does Oxfordshire. So just, jot down our email and get in touch if you want to get involved in any way. And that's it.